Welcome to the first coding challenge of this section, and this one is going to be an exciting one because in this one we are building a simple poll application. So a poll application has a question, an array of options from which people can choose, and an array with the number of replies for each option. And this data is stored in this object here that is already created for you. Now you can copy that object from the final code that is available for this section. Now okay, you see we have to question the arrays of options and also a new array of answers also. And so this code here, we will learn how it works in the next lecture. But this will create this array of 4 zeros. And that's because there are 4 options here for this question. And now here are your tasks. So first up in that poll object, create a new method called register new answer. And this method does two things. So displays a prompt window for the user to input the number of the selected options. And here I want the text to exactly like this, then based on the inputted number. So the user should input either 0, 1, 2 or 3. So based on that, update the answers array. And so if the user gives 3 here as the option, then increase the value at position 3 of the array. And of course, increase that by 1. So to do this, make sure that the input is actually a number. And if that number makes that, then I want you to call this method whenever the user clicks on this button. So this is where the second button here comes into play. Then number 3, create a method called display results, and this one should, as the name says, display the results of the poll. Now this method takes an argument called type, and the type should be a string, as I say here, and the value of that string should be either string or array. So these are two different ways of displaying the results. Basically, now if the type is set to the string of array, then simply display the results array as it is using a normal console.log, and this should actually be the default option. Now, if the type is set to string, then display a string like this one here. And okay, and then once you have this build method, and run it each time after the register a new answer. So essentially, whenever someone clicks on this button here, it will call this. Now there is register a new answer method, and then this method itself will call display results. Okay, and to do this, use many of tools that you learned in this section, and probably also the last sections, and really all the course itself. Now there are a lot of moving parts in this challenge, and it might be as straightforward as it seems here. So if we need to cut some corners and make some things a little bit easier, then that's absolutely no problem. At least just write some code on your own. That's really the main goal of this challenge. Then if you manage to do these challenges or to do the challenge as instructed here, then I also have a bonus for you, so that is to use this display results method that you built before to display these two arrays that we have here in this test data. So usually you simply use this method to display the answers array that's inside of the object. But here I want you to really display simply this array. And this array, of course, do not put this array here inside of this poll object. Now you should use them individually. For doing this, you have to really think about what this keyword should look like in this situation, and then you need to do, and then you basically need to set this keyword accordingly. So that's a nice challenge here, and one thing that is certain is that your code will look different than mine. I'm just a normal developer like anyone else, and everybody writes their own code, and so my code is different from everyone else's code. So if you are starting to develop your own style, then pause the video here and then write your own code on yourself. So let's get to work here. I hope it went well for you when you try it out on your own. Anyway, let's now get the answer here. So for that, we use prompt. So const answer prompt. And so let's see what it has to look like. So it's just a question, then it's a new line. Then it's these options and another new line and then right up to number. So this part is always the same. So I'm just copying it from there. And so we want to grab the question first so that this dot question, then the new line which is remembered, then we want the options, and so one new line for each of these options here. So this is an array, we want to transform it to a string, and for that we use the join method. So this one we learned about in the previous section. So I hope you remember this one. And so we take the options array here and join it. And we do join it again by the new line character. Now okay, and then finally another new line and then this part. And now we also need to convert this result to a number. So this looks good. Let's just add a comment here. So this is get the answer. And then here the second is to register. I think that's what we had here. So the first step is to get the answer. And the second step is to basically update the answer. So I'm just calling that register the answer. Okay, but here let's actually start by trying it out. So let's do for now poll dot register new answer. And this is exactly the formatting we are looking for. Let's say 3 and we get 3. So now let's register the answer and number that we should check if this value is actually a number and also if it makes actually sense. So in terms of the number of options, first we check if it is a number or not. And there are better ways of checking this, but more about this later. And we also want to know if the number is below the length of the array. So if the number answer is 10, then that does not make any sense. So it is must stay below the length. So the length here is 4. And so max reply that we accept is 3. So answer needs to stay below the dot answers dot length. Now here we could not do an if statement and basically saying that if this is true, then increase the answers array at the correct position. And this is actually a great use case for short circuiting with the AND operator. So let's simply do this dot answers. And then we go to the position of answers and then simply increase it like this. Now, so if this is true, then the AND operator will keep going. And so then this is evaluated and if it is still true, then this is here is executed. But if either one of these conditions here is false, then the AND operator will short circuit and this part here is not executed. And so this is nice use case for short circuiting because the code that we want to execute is to just one simple line of code. Now let's then take a look at the answers. So this dot answers is for now the register a new answer method. And now let's focus here on point number 2, which is to actually call the method whenever we click on the enter button. So let's select that button, document dot query selector, and now we need the class name. Let's check that out here again in the elements. So it has the class of poll. So poll dot event listener, click, and now the function that we want to execute. And so that is poll dot register new answer. Now do you think this will work like this? Let's give it a save and then see the result. See here we got an error that is based on the join method. So the problem here is you might have guessed because we talked about this before is that this keyword right now points to this element. So to this poll button here, and so again there is because an event handler function such as this one here, that is keyword will always point to the element to which it is attached. And so right now there is this button. So to fix this we need to the bind method, this keyword, and in this case we need to set it to the poll object. And so then in this function here, which is the result of the bind method, so in this function this keyword will then point to the poll object. So let's see that, and now it is working. So that's input 0 here, and now we already get our array where is the count of the answers in position 0 has increased, and if we try this again it should become 2. And it is now in order to actually display these results, we should create this new method called display results. Now it takes a string called type with array being the default here. And let's do this. And always keep in mind that this is the kind of string that we want. If the type is string, so let's copy this one. And now here we add that new method called display results. And so it gets the type. And remember that it has the default set to array. So here we can use the year 6 default parameters using this equal sign. So if type equals array, then simply log this dot and this dot answers to the console. Else if the type equals string, then we want to log something to this console. So once more using the template string or template literal, and actually this would be outside results. And then to create this here, we can simply join the array together to form a string. So that's this dot results and actually answers. Dot join, and we join them with a comma and a space. So now here, let's get rid of this console.log, and instead we will now call this method. So this dot display results, and that's actually called twice, once without passing any argument and then here passing string. And so then we will see both type of results printed on the console. So this is number 4 here. So let's give it a save. And then click on button 0. It gives the same number. Let's try 3 again. Now we have the, and that's because of the testing logic that we have here. So I hope you have been following this for. So this is familiar to what we have been doing, and now let's check out the bonus here. So let's use the display results method that we just used. But to display these two arrays, let's copy them just. We don't have to scroll so much. And it says here that we should think about what the this keyword will look like. So we will do that, of course. Okay. So these are the arrays that we are going to work. And the method is at poll.display results. But as I said now, what we want to call this method here, not with the array. So not with the answers array, but instead with this array. So what should we do here? Well, we will have to use the call method because we will need a new this keyword, right? Because display results uses this dot answers. So the answers come from the this keyword. And so if we want to have a different this keyword, then we need to use call. And this keyword be like we need an object which contains the answers property here. Otherwise, there is no way for this method to call this dot answers. So we can simply create a new object and say answers and then this array, and that's it. Let's try this. Here the result is printed like an array. And that's even now passing us the string option. And so now indeed we get poll results are 5, 2 and 3. So again to recap this works because this function here is looking for this dot answers. But our array is, well, it's simply out here. So we need a way to make this dot answers equal to this array. So that's why we use it to call method here. So that we would manually set this keyword to a new object, which is the answers property has the new array. And now let's just try it with the other one. And we can do it with the same without the string. And it will just log the array itself. And that's work just fine. So it is working perfectly. And now what we did here, it's not really a real scenario, but it's still good for us to use these concepts in some different ways to really get used to how all of these concepts. And so we will continue in the next lecture. Thank you.